Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. As we continue on this Tuesday's silver coverage here in the markets, and fortunately, I'm joined by James Pitbull Anderson, calling in live from Panama. Already has a nice buffer zone between him and the U.S. governmental and banking structure that appears to have James, would you say that the price got tamped down around the $18 level or the $28 level today here?
I
Is
saw
that what,
last night, yeah, I saw some tweets and various people showing volumes, which is the most important part, is to see, that thing gets shot down from 28. Yeah, it seems like right now 28 is the line, and but we're slowly but surely, buoyantly still going after it. I don't see it being as effective, and so 30 is probably not that long away. We all know 30 is the real big number, and if you clear 30, you get to 32, 33, you could really get running. And it's just a question of really when, not if. It's got to happen. You can't blow out the fiat monetary base like we've done and think that silver's not going to explode at some point. So, I mean, you can buy time if you want, but that's mainly what looks like they're doing is buying time.
Yeah, well, James, it sure is interesting. I'm assuming that we won't have to wait much longer than until Thursday because that's when the House Financial Services Committee, I'm sure Maxine Waters is reviewing my letter that I sent her right now to update the nation.
She's going to have some really good questions, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, because that MRAC futures market structure that the JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs both vote on could have been controlling. It doesn't seem like they controlled the volatility very much today. In fact, I had made a video yesterday saying I was expecting some late night spoofing because of options expiration, which did happen. You see, I was winning my bet here and then again here. Although interesting, it looks like it went right in the bank's face, which is always enjoyable, at least until the market structure tamped it down at the 28 level. One can only guess how scared Ralston Benham and the LBMA, I don't know if they're partners yet at this point, or I guess they are since their members vote on the same policies, but look at me getting carried away again. James Pitbull Anderson, how are you before we dig into all this good stuff today?
I am very good, Chris. It's good to be back on your show. It's been a while, and I enjoy it. I love watching your show through YouTube all the time. It's funny how YouTube's gotten so good in terms of giving you niche quality content that you're really interested and nerdy about, and your channel is one of the funnest. So I appreciate being on here, and it's exciting, and everything's good.
Well, I'm just trying to get up to CPM Group's level. James, as you know, despite him, Jeff Christian, saying that if he fell off a motorcycle and suffered brain damage, he would know more than anyone in Wall Street Silver, which was perplexing because when I offered him to come on the show, David Morgan, David Smith, Chris Marchese, Ronan Manley, Rob Keane, Dave Kranzler, I think you were on there too. Jeff said that none of us were in his league, which is understandable and why I'm sitting here practicing every day. But what I didn't get was he said he ended up picking someone from the Wall Street Silver Group that was dumber than him post motorcycle brain damage. So I didn't get that. I don't know if any man is meant to understand such nature's mysteries. So why don't we leave that aside and instead I will pull up a Silver SD Bullion, not Silver Doctors website. Although James, before we dig into these premiums, I did on your related site, SD Silver Doctors rather. I did find it interesting that there was an article that investors might not buy that transitory inflation line now that you had that 4% print. Lumber and the cost of everything on the planet is skyrocketing. Even it seems as if whatever is actually in the CPI that isn't stripped out, even those prices are going up. So James, any quick comments on, are you buying the inflation being transitory before we get to premiums?
Yes. So I do believe inflation will be transitory the next time we have another big bank failure, or there's some huge deflationary nightmare that happens, because it's just any time they want to come true and clean with the balance sheets of a lot of things in this world, a lot of things are running bankrupt and running on fumes. So there's just a bunch of lies going on. So at any point they can pull the plug and we could have another deflationary scare nightmare like we had in March 2020. So, but they just keep injecting so much fiat currency into the system. Eventually, you know, with time, that currency has to go somewhere. And, you know, right now it's stuffing into bubble assets like stock market and into real estate. You see how many people are trying to buy houses. You see the lumber costs, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes into a whole bunch of places, but ultimately I think it goes to an undermining of confidence in the store of value of the currencies that we use. And I think that's the big thing that no one's really prepared for, is the tidal wave of collapsing confidence that could happen here, where all of a sudden bullion becomes, you know, we're going to talk about premiums. You think premiums are bad now. If we have a tidal wave of people running the bullion, forget what spot says, you know, all of a sudden it becomes, what price can you have it at and how fast can you deliver it to this Brinks location or to this Loomis location? You know, that's really what matters the most if you're dealing in real size. So yeah, I just think that we're looking at these very small points in the game right now. In the big picture, next few years, there's going to be some holistic changes to how things work and the confidence in the system.
Well, I think so. Although at the risk of upsetting and offending some of my fellow Arcadians here, I would point out that actually it seems as if the inflation has started to flow into the silver market. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say the fraudulent COMEX paper price, which is not the silver market. That's the market for the fraudulent COMEX paper price. But in terms of actual silver, if we look here, we see 2809 spot there.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my understanding of the market structure, an unsafe level from which the price will need to be tamped down. Look at gold up $1,900 today. You know, it was weird. We had gold across 2000 a year ago. Then since then, 40% of the dollars in existence were printed. Gold's a little lower. I wonder if that's a, what would they call that on Wall Street? An opportunity to initiate a new position or something like that.
You could just buy it now, and later on it'll be worth 3,000. You know, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen.
Yeah, and James, I mean, here, let's see, which is the appropriate, which is the bellwether American Eagle to look at? Which would be the appropriate one?
That would be if markets are normal. Okay, if they're trading normal in the bullion industry, I've been working in it since 2008. So I have seen it in get me out of the bank crisis panic mode in the fall of 2008, where people were running in hair on fire. They were paying, you know, look, spot said like $690 for gold, and this lady's paying $930 for a kilo bar of gold. Okay, do the math on the premium there. That's like a 33% premium. That's as if someone's willing to pay $2,600 for a kilo of gold today. You know, that's how crazy it got. People were really scared. So back then, Silver Eagles, they had this weird thing because they have a huge premium they garner from the U.S. Mint, where I think now it's like $255 for the APs to buy these things, and I'm sure it's going to $3 with the new formats. And that's just wholesale $3. That's as cheap as anyone can buy them brand new, and it's only a select group that can get them. And they don't deal with the retail public. You call their desk, they just hang the phone up on you. They don't know you. This is a game of relationships. It's just like if you were trying to call up Goldman Sachs, you know, trading desk, you better be, you know, a client of theirs high up, that you have someone's phone number that would be willing to talk to you. Otherwise, just hang up the phone.
I did call and get through to Jeff Curry's email, so I don't know how that fits in there.
Sure,
but just
very soon.
Yeah,
You can't wait to respond. But the bottom line is that the premiums have been blown out. Obviously, we know since COVID occurred, they kind of slimmed down when the spot prices were chasing toward record highs in August of 2020. But since they've blown out again, and it's a combination of multi-factors we can go over if you want, but it's not just simply that dealers are jacking up the spreads. That's true on the wholesale and retail level. Dealers are making a good profit, and this is what you see after they've starved for 4 or 5 years. I don't know if you've been in the bullion industry for a long time buying, but if you were here from 2014,
you just call me Junior.
I'm talking to the crowd out there. If you were here from 2014 to 2019, you would have known that the premiums were absolute razor thin. I mean, there were deals for like, you just buy at spot as a loss leader so we can get your email address. We'll send you a 10-ounce silver bar at spot. And that the whole reason for that was to build your email list. Businesses were doing that all day. And so that was a common promotion that happened in the late 20 teens. That's not happening ever again. Not at Spot. Is that those days are over with. So I think to get across to those people is, yeah, premiums are high, and I'm not sure they're coming down ever again to anywhere where they were in the 20 teens, late 20 teens. I don't think that's ever happening because you've had multiple factors involved that are they're very large in terms of keeping the spreads pretty wide. And you just have a huge consolidation of the industry, all the way from wholesale to retail to refiners. You know, the people who are actually refining the metals, turning them into products that are 1 ounce, 100 ounce, the ones that are homogenous that people want to buy and that are not a pain in the arse to sell, because 1,000-ounce bars are not easy to sell. Each one is unique. You have to create a new URL for each one. There's a lot of cost involved with that. A lot of work required with that. It's a new SKU on each time you put it on your website. So it's complex. It's not as easy as just having one general SKU. You just shove out as much as you can. No, you have to do a unique SKU for each 1,000-ounce bar. Not easy. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but the bottom line is there's a lot of factors involved, and premiums are not coming back down to those late 20-teen levels. It's just not happening. Never again. At least not for the next decade or so.
Well, Pitbull, speaking of things that aren't happening, if that was some mild attempt to dissuade me and my keyboard thumping friends from what we discussed yesterday about opening an account and taking a delivery of a COMEX contract, I mean, consider it done. It's not, you can't talk me out of that. Although, James, I guess at the heart of it, though, why are, and I'll pull that page back up, in terms of like a 2021 American Eagle, am I looking? This is the right one here. I see this is Type 2. I don't
There's
know.
a new one. The Type 2 is going to be out in July.
Which is the standard? Is this the?
That's the standard. That's the one that ran from 86 to 2021, that version.
Okay, so this thing looks like it's just at 50%, almost exactly. What is the problem? Is it? Now, I hear some people blame it on the Mint, who actually I was just typing an email to because my understanding is that they are legally required by the government to make the Eagles available. So is it that the Mint isn't making them available to the dealers, or why is the price? I'm assuming that the dealers are paying over spot as well. Is that correct?
Very similar to the way the bond market works. It's basically a cartel. Okay, you have a cartel of certain dealers that are only allowed to buy directly from the U.S. Mint. The U.S. Mint, basically sits on top of the bullion industry and has, a lot of power, and they can dictate terms. Very similar to the way the Federal Reserve and the machinations of the way the bond market gets worked. There's only so many dealers that can actually buy bonds directly from, I believe, the Federal Reserve. So it's similar in that way, that it's kind of like a cartel. And so when there's tightening like this, the cartel looks around, they're like, okay, we have only so much supply over here. We know that the U.S. Mint's going to take a break for a few months. We have a lot of demand. We pretty much have pricing power right now. So I don't think they have any more 2021s in the old version. I think they've almost sold out of them all. But the largest desks, they're asking for like $7. No, I'm sorry, asking for like $10 and a half over spot for these things. All right, think about that. 10 and a half over spot on a wholesale deal. I got to buy, I don't know, what's the amount? I got to buy at least 500 ounces from these guys, so they're not going to do business with me. So, or 5,000 ounces. So you got to come with pretty good size. And they're asking for 10 and a half right off top, right? Spots at 28, 10 and a half. That's huge premium. They're making, they're getting them at 255, they're 10 and a half, $8 per coin. They're minting currency. Okay. So it's basically a gold rush for these guys. They're making a lot of currency, and the retailers are making decent premiums too, but it's nothing like it is for the cartel wholesalers. They have sharp elbows, and during these times they mint currency.
James, as brilliant as you are, I'm going to have to correct your linguistics a little bit, just out of respect to Deutsche Bank. It appears they like being referred to a mafia rather than a cartel. As you see, that's a term more in line with the traders when they flex their muscles and draw blades or trigger an avalanche by a pebble, which is achieved by smashing it good.
Chris, how about the fact that they use chat logs where like the bank can then go after them and find the logs. Like, how stupid are you? If you're going to break the law, don't do it in writing, you idiots. God.
Yeah, actually, you could say that, hey, these were the olden days. People didn't know better. Although that wouldn't be true because I started on the trading floor in 2005. And I remember regularly the compliance guy saying 2 out of every 3 things I typed are read by a compliance internal or external. So probably if you were going to screw other people, and it might not be wise to leave evidence that could be subpoenaed. Actually, maybe it doesn't really matter because Deutsche Bank did it. They just paid a small tax and continue to do the same thing again.
Keep making profits. Keep going on. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So, maybe that has something to do with why we have $28 silver, while Bitcoin, even with its recent flummoxing, still, an 80 bagger since 2015. Well, and James, I would say what you're getting at with talking about these premiums is the diagnosis of something not being right. Because sure, if you look at just the price, $28, you could just look at this chart and say, well, that seems unlike anything I've ever seen in the organized history of finance before, aside from previous silver market charts. But these are the indications. And I would suggest that here, if you look at the inflows, I know Jeff Curry thought the inflows into iShares weren't big, but now this has gone positive. A couple of weeks ago, that was negative, but we see money going into Sprott. Amazingly, some people are putting their money into Deutsche Bank's trust, which
money out there, Chris. There always is.
I guess they like getting muscled and bladed by the silver mafia, but metal coming out of the COMEX. And I would suggest that when you add this with what we're seeing with the premiums, there's a reason for it. And it would be, to me, indicative that things are not right beneath the surface. What do you say there, Pitbull?
I totally agree. The investment demand in the last 2 years is off the charts in terms of silver. And I know we have these terrible data keepers who the way that they keep the data is very questionable. And I think we do a pretty poor job of trying to dig through and find transparency in these markets.
James, just to be clear, were you referring to the preeminent bullion agency in the globe, the LBMA, that accidentally miscounted 116 million ounces, which anyone could lose? At the same time that they JP Morgan reportedly added 118 million ounces that nobody I know thought of was possible. Is that what you were referring to?
That's only one, but that's, this is a saga, Chris. And as you know, it literally is like a volume of fraud or potential incompetency. I'm not sure which of the two. Either way, it's ridiculous that someone is that incompetent or fraudulent, one of the two. And
Jeff Christian needs competition, right? It's a free market.
It's like how do you screw that up? I don't understand. You work at the desk that does this every month. You know what that number should be. How large of a lock that is. Like, what are you doing at your desk all day? That's your job.
James, I might be able to take a stab at that one if you'd like.
But there's other ones, right? Everyone's been critical of Silver Institute.
That is a no.
No, there's been other ones that,
to myself.
No, go ahead. Tell me what. What do you think?
No, it's okay.
No, the crowd wants to know.
All right. Well, as I wrote a letter to Maxine Waters over the weekend. Big fan, and she gets to hang out there. On Thursday, they're having a congressional meeting called Holding Mega Banks Accountable. Dude, I'm not making that. I swear that's really the name. I'll pull up.
But they're like writing headlines like it's Wall Street on parade, and then you get into the actual meat of this thing, and nothing's gonna happen. These people are bought and paid for. Terrible.
Yeah, well, one of the things I mentioned to Maxine that perhaps she could bring up with Jamie when he's there on Thursday is that keep in mind that they actually did get caught lying when they were questioned the original time because they were brought in the case. They lied about it. And then when more evidence came out, then they were forced to acknowledge they lied. They didn't apologize. Or it wasn't like they confessed. They just got caught lying about covering up the initial crime, which is the only reason then that they did anything. So just want to make sure that was clear. Maybe that's where some of the confusion comes from. They're part of the LBMA as well.
Do you think they're going to question them at all about this repo loan nonsense that started in September 2019 and pretty much set off well before this COVID pandemic came about? I mean, we've been from there to now, it's been nonstop insanity with the plumbing of the financial system and the injections of fiat currency into the system. Obviously, I think something exploded in the shadow banking system, and they've yet to come clean with who's bankrupt and who's not yet. That's my thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that they will necessarily do anything, although it's fun to get the evidence on the record so that way, at least when they ignore and suppress it, they would be technically guilty of obstruction of justice as well. And actually, James, one add on there, if I may. I think part of it, I don't hear anybody else mention, yeah, I get it. You know, these guys, a lot of them are profiting off of it, most likely. But you got to remember, when these guys make their deal with the devil, now I wouldn't know exactly because I've not done that. I was hearing again this morning about how the Scientologists require $1 billion contract. So I kind of stay away from stuff like that. But my understanding is that the kinds of people that do these things, once they no longer need you, they cut you loose. And in fact, I'm curious to see what will happen with acting Commissioner Benham. Because his tenure actually runs out next month in June.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he'll go work for another hedge fund, just like his predecessor.
I think he's going to Goldman. That's where I'm putting my ounces on Goldman. I think that would just be. He already knows the people there. Apparently, he knows Alicia Creighton, who sets the market policy. So there's a good relationship.
It's a revolving door of a bunch of phonies. You know, what do you want?
I want freedom and integrity and James Pitbull Anderson as chair of the CFTC. Is that too much to ask?
We'd have to recharter. We wouldn't be called the CFTC. We'd have to start over because it would be, you'd have to get Bill Black as the head and we'd go after everybody. You know, there'd just be a wholesale change.
And what would you call it, James? What would the name of, if James were taken over?
Oh man, it would be called Law and Order. That's what it would be called. Goddamn Law and Order. Sorry to use that term, but that's the frank fact. A lot of fraud, not much prosecution.
Well, James, hopefully we'll be able to get you in on one of our upcoming Silver Industry Integrity Committee's meetings soon, where we actually do things along the lines of what you're suggesting. And I might add, the best part is it's like the greatest defense policy ever. We don't have to worry about any bankers showing up because they'd have to be able to spell integrity to get the website address correct. So it's a safe place for silver investors only, as you can see.
There's no silver industry backstabbing committee. Are they going to form that one, or what are they going to be doing?
I believe CPM Group is already working on that. So you could
silver industry mafia backstabbing committee.
I'm not sure the exact title, but I mean, again, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask. But anyway.
No, James, it sounds good, Chris. It sounds good. I'd like to be involved with that committee. It sounds good.
Yeah. Well, one last one before if you have anything else to add on. But in terms of the premiums on the 1,000-ounce bars, the wholesale bars, we talked about that a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago as well. But can you give folks an idea of what was normal whenever the last time we saw normal, and then what has happened between February and today and where we stand now?
So 1,000-ounce bars for a long time in the industry, they don't normally get purchased unless you're dealing with someone who's seven-figure buyer and they want to put huge things of pallets of 1,000-ounce bars at Brinks or Loomis. Say a seven-figure guy would call me to order large 1,000-ounce bars from even 2009 to like the late 2000 teens, with maybe a couple small exceptions of time frames. It would just simply be like, all right, to get 1,000-ounce bars, you could get them at like a dime or 20 cents over spot. And then you just have to factor in, what's my charge to get it delivered in full, insured. And usually when you're dealing in that kind of size, it's not expensive because these different, people that you're getting it through, the channels they have grandfathered in prices with Brinks and Loomis. I mean, it's really cheap to get a huge amount of silver delivered, with secure logistics companies if you have good relationships and when times are not COVID chaos, right? But now 1,000-ounce bars, $1.25 roughly, to get them in any size. And you can get them. It's just a real pain. Most of these desks that we deal with are dealing in homogeneous product. They don't want to deal in 1,000-ounce bars because it's a true pain. And so sourcing them is a little bit of work, and it just doesn't flow
Wait,
as easy.
James, did you just say that the dealers don't want to deal in the specification of product that is offered by the alleged preeminent exchange? So basically, COMEX, which every place in the world is indexing their price off of and has 1,000-ounce bars, and that's a form that most people in the industry don't want to touch. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct, because it's not homogeneous. The word homogeneous means that it's absolutely even, right? One for one. And there's not any of this fractional stuff. If there's fractional stuff, you get people who are butthurt because they feel they got gypped for a price, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, Chris, that's exactly what I'm telling you, is that 1,000-ounce bars, you could, I guess for industry, it's okay, but for large investors, it's a real pain to keep track of and to use and to exchange with customers and have it go over smoothly in your systems and not lose track of your bars or your numbers. It can get a little bit complex. And then we're moving down to the 100-ounce bars. There are pretty big players who make 100-ounce bars, and the 100-ounce bars have been coming in. The premium's been coming down. You see, I think we're selling retail at $369 over spot, a lot cheaper than it has been. But that's, back in the day, 100-ounce bars, 40 cents, 60 cents over spot, something like that. And that's, back when we're talking silver in the teens, so say spots 18, you're getting them for $18.60 all in to your door. It's pretty cheap. Now it's over 30. I mean, now Chris, the way I consider bullion, silver's over $30 in my brain, because the only way to get me silver is $30 in your hand at least. And I mean, you could PSLV it, and get a little bit of leverage sometimes if the premium's not high on it. But I mean, for real physical silver in your hand, it's over $30 already.
Yeah, well, I mean, which kind of makes the whole idea of the COMEX seemingly meaningless. In fact, I'm reading this book by Paul Sarnoff called Silver Bulls. It's incredible. I didn't get to finish this because it's a long chapter, but today they were going through the different ways the COMEX officials screwed their customers, because the COMEX officials looks like they were short too. That old Dr. Jarecki, what a character he seems to have been. I wonder if he knows Jeff Curry.
There's a long history of the COMEX and the CFTC just being so close together, touching elbows, and they always look after one another.
I'd like to get someone from the COMEX, see if they would come on the show and explain what happened in 1980. I'm guessing they would give me the same answer that the U.S. Mint, the Perth Mint, J.P. Morgan, CME, Goldman Sachs, and multiple people at the CFTC have given me. Although I did get a call back from the CFTC, James. Do you know about that?
No, tell me.
Public Affairs. In fact, I'm going to have to respond to her later today. I want to know if I do want to check how it's going. I sent a lot of evidence explaining the crime, since God knows the CFTC commissioners are never going to find it, even if they trip over it multiple times per day. But James, you can see here, they've managed to turn their whistleblower program. They've copied the Social Security template. And despite the payouts being a percent, let's see, where do we go? It's whistleblowers can collect between 10 and 30% of the penalty. Yet somehow they're going to bankrupt the program, giving $100 million to a guy, for a former Deutsche Bank executive. So let's keep it in the banking family.
Sure.
So large, it would deplete the agency's whistleblower funds. So it is seeking congressional investigation so they can steal more money from the taxpayers. In fact, I'm thinking next year about not filling out taxes and just say, I'm taking a CFTC deduction.
Think about the transparency of this, Chris. Like the JP Morgan fine was like $920 million, right? I mean, CFTC got a large chunk of that. Does anyone know when did they get that money? What was that money used for? Could we get an actual description of what's going on with that money?
I can answer part of that. In fact, $311 million was actually set aside for victim restitution. Now, I don't trade.
You had to be trading COMEX futures.
It was a very specific type of COMEX contract that I didn't trade. So, I mean, if you buy physical or mining stocks, then banks cheat you there. The government doesn't care. I didn't really see. I had to dig to find that actually there was money left for victim restitution, and I've not met anyone who has been restituted. But
yeah.
that's why the Silver Industry Integrity Committee, we're doing things the Arcadian way, James, where I get it. People are saying, can the manipulation ever end? Although when investors see some of the alternatives that they don't have to look up the price on the COMEX soon because there's someone building a physical silver index. I believe he's contacted you as well as many of the mining companies. We're finding solutions so people don't. It's like often they feel like, well, I have to go get hit over the head with a shovel by the banks because there's no alternative.
Right.
And that's what I think is beautiful about free markets and honor and integrity outside of Deutsche Bank's silver mafia cartel, because I think that's why this metal is coming off the COMEX, because people are realizing they've been, or I don't know, maybe everybody else was reading Paul Sarnoff's book and realizing that the COMEX screws their customers. It's hard to say.
I mean, you got to be a degenerate gambler to be along on the COMEX and silver. I mean, you really have to be a gambler. You have to be a real.
We are in Wall Street, U.S., right?
All right. So one thing about the COMEX, I've been looking at the data. We have 40 million roughly ounces of silver that's sucked out of the CNT and MTB warehouses. And since the silver squeeze began, those are huge deaths, very important. And they basically are all investment demand. That's all silver squeezers. And then you have about 50 million that went into PSLV, 55 million roughly. And if you run the numbers on how much has gone in since the silver squeeze in this year, PSLV, Galactic Trader claimed on Twitter, it's true. It's about 1/6 of new silver that's coming out of mines this year has already gotten shoved into PSLV, on track to now in May, right? So, to keep this pace up, you're gonna squeeze them. You're gonna silver squeeze them. So I think it's good. I think people need to keep it up, stay rabid, stay hungry, keep after it.
James, I would say that's complete conspiracy theory. Had the LBMA's own report not verified everything you said, perhaps if there's anything I could chastise you for, it's for kind of toning down. But fortunately, I did find an interesting note. Did you happen to go through the Silver Institute? They put out a fantastic new paper recently. Did you get to sift through that one?
Was it the one about silver that actually bends and such, and how much demand is coming for that? Buck Rogers silver usage. There's a lot of industrial applications coming up for silver that are pretty high tech.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that could have been the same one, although that is certainly a valid takeaway. Although I had a different eye catcher that I haven't shared yet. I've been known about this for 2 weeks. I'm not sitting on it like the CFTC with blatant evidence of how their market's rigged, but I could tell you if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody in the audience? Thumbs up if you want to see it. All right. I'll assume that's a yes. Because here on page 21, how kind of them to put the keyboard thumpers around the globe got a little paragraph. So I'll skim through here until we get to the money shot. Early February, silver experienced a short-lived but aggressive spurt of price volatility. Now, actually, I dispute that right off the bat, because the price spike was short-lived because of the whole tamping down thing. But the volatility has continued. In fact, I would say this might be almost equally volatile and fraudulent as to what we saw back then. But let us continue on. I mean, you can't expect to agree with everything in a report. Momentarily, its price broke over 30, a level not seen since 2013. Now, this was triggered by comments on social media platforms. James, do you use social media? I'm either talking about you. I mean, you never know. Initially, and notably Reddit, calling for a coordinated retail investor effort to buy silver. Coordinated, heard mafia.
Nice
the banks
it wasn't coordinated.
Coordinated.
Yeah,
fact that I could guess
anything.
Yeah, I mean, how could I guess the options expiration each month if it weren't? Some posts proposed there was a systemic shorting of silver by major financial institutions, creating an opportunity to trigger a short squeeze. Well, I'll take that a step further. They didn't just propose it. Those same institutions actually put it in their own prospectuses, while Jeff Curry lied about it on February 2nd and February 4th. So we can clear that up. Crucially, this happened while controversies surrounding GameStop, it's always GameStop or COVID's fault, fueled a rush of buying across all arenas of silver. And by the way, it's interesting when they mentioned the proposed systemic shorting. This was actually written by Metals Focus, the same guys who wrote the LBMA report. So maybe they forgot that they wrote about how scared they were running out of metals.
Real quickly, Chris, the guys who write for Metals Focus are all over the world. I think some of them are like in India and such. They have no idea like some of the true granularity that's gone on in the history of this thing. So, that's why some of their word choices are pretty poor.
Well, I mean, I guess we can't expect the banks to write accurate research now, given the history. That'd be silly. But here we go. So soon enough, it became clear that a Reddit silver squeeze would not last. I don't know that that's become clear. I think it's continued.
That's bogus. This is not, GameStop took years to form. I mean, what do they think this is? Like, people just gave it a 1 week try on Twitter? Come on. Like, silver squeeze is a phenomenon, and it's generally just whatever anyone wants to do. It's organic. It's not coordinated. This idea of coordination is wrong.
Well, James, when you're in a country where one of the prime political families, this case the Bushes, were actually part of the Brown Brothers Harriman financing the Nazis, I mean, I guess it's reasonable to expect Nazi tactics to continue in the banking system. And soon enough, it became clear that the silver squeeze would not last. I mean, I missed that. I wasn't clear. In their view, it was to be expected, though. And I'm wondering, how did they expect that? But we're going to get to that. Because first and foremost, we do not believe there is systemic shorting of silver by major market players. I'd suggest they read the SIVR prospectus, page 8, where they confirm as much. But second, or their own report where they explained how they were running out of metal and couldn't fulfill all the claims, that too. But I know you're getting worried. The audience is getting worried. Where is he going with this? There's a saving grace coming. Because second, the silver market is considerably larger than that of earlier single stock targets like Reddit. I think, according to Jeff Curry, larger than all of the equity markets. But the good news, finally, the market's highly regulated. For example, by the CFTC, which could potentially step in any millennium before planet Earth ceased to exist. This makes cornering it, because when the CFTC is on the watch like that, I mean, when you have the big guns like Rosti at the top of that army, that makes cornering silver, which is effectively what the proposed coordinated keyboard thumping buying hope to achieve, extremely difficult. Or as Jeff Curry once said, it's incredibly unlikely.
It's not cornering if you have 1 million or 2 million people acting on their own behalf to buy bullion or do whatever they want. That's not a cornering. That's just people buying it because they like the metal. They're screwed. These people are screwed. I mean, look at what they write. It's just ridiculous. You can blow holes in this all day.
Well, it reminds me of the kind of corporate propaganda I was privy to at my 2-year stint in Wharton.
It's just
like
unbelievable.
Like if you get stealing a car, they send you there.
If you can think critically at all and you see this, it's just laughing.
Well, James, to wrap things up, for people who are looking to think critically, can you confirm or deny that you've rebranded your YouTube channel? Now it's specifically covering the analysis of Jeff Curry and Goldman Sachs. For people who are wanting to think critically, can you let them know what they get here? I'm a big fan. I've hit the subscription button and the notification bell. Not bragging, but just saying. So what do they get here, Pitbull?
So every week, at least once a week, come out with a SD Bullion market update. It's usually on Friday evening. So people, if they don't have Friday evening, if they're out and about, they can find it Saturday morning. If they do, say you're doing some stuff on the computer Saturday morning, it's usually brief. Like I try and keep it to like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes tops. And I try and keep it pretty focused and scripted. So it's not meandering in a whole bunch of places. I try and keep it tight. And there's a lot of charts and stuff. So hopefully you do enjoy charts because there's a lot of analytical stuff. And I try to keep a little bit of dark humor in it too. Like this silly picture about how silver was going to be 55 an ounce in 2011. And that never came about. And many have died at their keyboards waiting for that. They've been thumping at their keyboards ever since about 2011 takedown.
It got tamped down hard.
Yeah, sure did. But yeah, I mean,
by this guy.
Yeah, there's your man. So yeah, it is. I try and pull from the week, what are the biggest stories in my mind, and what viewers should keep in mind as time goes along. And so, I guess I'm a bit of a, what would you call that? An aggregator of content. I try and spew out the
Keyboard
stuff.
thumping aggregator, I believe, is the exact term.
Right, a collector of the things that really matter, and trying to give you a perspective that's not simply, what's gold going to trade on Monday morning, and more about where's this thing going in terms of next few years, more on the macro picture and side of the way that this industry is setting up.
Now, James, let's cut the chit chat, get to the important stuff here. There are new, I couldn't believe this. I was stunned. But here 2 months ago, this is where I found those glorious tamp down comments. Wow, he still won't talk to me. He was back at it doing another fireside chat.
Nice.
And this one was special. This was a one-on-one with Rosty and Dick Burner of NYU.
Dick Burner.
Seems like they're tight. Is there any chance we are going to get some James Anderson coverage of the CFTC? I mean, I think you'll be stunned at, they talked about transparency all throughout this, and even potentially opening up oversight to the CFTC committee. So is that the kind of thing your fans might look forward to coverage soon? It's a big story.
I've done a couple of videos on CFTC back when they tried to, when they claimed that they were putting in position limits after a 10-year delay, and Heath Talcum was on set doing like Clint Eastwood impressions, and it was just so ridiculous. Like, I couldn't believe that these people feign as if they are actual regulators. So I did that video, and it was just I basically lit the CFTC on fire, essentially, with the matches, and YouTube algorithm didn't really like that. So I decided I'll be not covering the CFTC ever again, because ultimately, Chris,
who actually could not have enjoyed that?
No, our viewers liked it, but the algorithm, YouTube's algorithm, will suppress you if you burn the CFTC a bit too hot. So what I did is I pretty much have taken the tack that you got to remember that the CFTC came about to literally inject price volatility into the gold price as gold was re-legalized in the United States. They are founded on the very intention of dissuading U.S. Citizens from saving gold bullion. So if that's your founding charter, sounds to me that we've got to burn the charter down, start over. It's a terrible regulator. That's basically where I'm at on it. I think these people are, like I said earlier, they're just revolving door, phony, half-wit. They'll just do it. They're just self-interested climbers of the corporate ladder. These people, they have no real loyalty to their fellow citizens. They have no real loyalty over the macro picture of the way the country's operating and how we're getting our ass handed to us from China. These people are real self-interested punks, and I don't really like to spend too much time on them.
Yeah, well, I can see that. You're clearly holding back, so I won't press you on how you really feel. James, perhaps one more time before we wrap up, let folks know where they find SD Bullion on YouTube.
Sure. Yeah, it's simply just on YouTube. If you simply YouTube search SD Bullion, you'll find our videos. I would suggest just going to check out the last few and see if you like it. And if you do like it and you think the content's worthwhile, subscribe. And then every week you'll get something. And I'll probably be putting out more videos, and soon it'll probably be 2 videos a week. I won't overwhelm you with too many videos, but I'll try and keep the content so after 10 minutes, when you're done, you can walk away and say, there was some value there. That's basically my intention. So hopefully I can keep delivering that to you.
And James, I would suggest if you find anyone who watches your channel and doesn't like it, tell them to get the treasuries out of their portfolio and come back for round 2. I find that usually works pretty well. So I thank you for being a voice of intelligence in a largely Keynesian world, but getting the silver to the people any way that you can. That's heroic behavior, in my opinion. And let's make sure we don't wait as long next time to get you back on. I have a feeling a lot of bankers are going to be doing some stupid shit in the near future, and we're going to need you, Pitbull. So go rest up. You may have to put up with me in Panama soon. I'm driving south. I'm getting ready.
Oh man, if you come down here, we'll do an incredible video podcast from I'll take you to a place that'll blow away the viewers. We'll get a drone too, and we'll show them some stuff.
Well, that sounds good to me. Better than taking the tour of the Fed, as they say. So, with that said, folks, thank you all for watching and listening. And thank you, James, for being here. And we will be back with more silver either later today or tomorrow.